Hello, I'm Katie Black from Cookery Doodle Doo and I'm really excited to share another recipe with you guys today. If you're an adult watching them, please bear with me. These videos are aimed at children who will be cooking with their adults, but you're very, very welcome to join in as well. It's suitable for all ages. So the reason we're making Jaffa bread and butter pudding, or why it's called that, is because it's got the flavours of chocolate and orange in it. If you don't have the chocolate or you don't have the orange or you don't have either, that's fine. You'll still end up with a really nice bread and butter pudding, so that isn't a problem. But this one is delicious. I don't even like Terry's chocolate orange. I know some people will think I'm weird, but I don't, but I still love this pudding, so I really hope you'll enjoy it too. So the first thing we're going to do is make an orange flavoured custard, and then we're going to assemble it into a pudding with the bread and butter and obviously the chocolate as well. So if you'll come with me over to my bowl down here, what I've got in here already is some double cream. To weigh out double cream or milk or water or any liquid like that, it's not as accurate with cream, but it doesn't matter for this. You don't have to necessarily use a measuring jug. You can just pop it on some digital scales and put 90 grams, and that will basically give you around about 90 mils. It's completely accurate for water, a bit less accurate for cream, but it will work just fine. Okay, so into this cream we're going to add some sugar. I've got 45 grams of caster sugar here, and that's just going to go in. And then I'm just going to use this little bowl to crack my eggs, okay? And the reason I'm going to crack the eggs into a little bowl first is twofold. First of all, if you get any shell in your egg, then it's much easier to pick out if you've just got one egg in there rather than lots. And the other thing, it's slightly old-fashioned, but actually it's probably quite important at the moment. If you're buying your eggs from a shop, they've got really good dates on them, you know exactly where you're at. If you're getting your eggs from farms, or you're getting them from people who've got chickens, you don't necessarily know how old that egg is, and sometimes it's possible to crack an egg and realise it's maybe not as fresh as you thought it was. So if you crack the eggs one at a time into a separate bowl, you're never going to risk ruining the entire mixture just for the sake of one egg. So it's really good practice to always just crack one egg at a time into a little separate bowl first. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do now. So I have got 2 eggs here, and children who cook with me regularly will know the best way of doing this, but essentially it's 2 stages. What we're going to do is we're going to tap the shell until we get a hole in the shell, and then I'll show you how to open it. But the first thing you need to do is tap. You don't need to keep looking, you just tap and listen, and you will hear when that shell has a hole in it. There we go, you can hear it very distinctly. I'm now going to find that hole. It's quite a big one on this occasion. I'm going to give it a thumbs up because I'm really pleased I found that hole. Okay, those thumbs, they're going to have a little kiss, they're excited. There we go, and we're going to put them into the hole together, but the egg makes them have an argument, so they're going to come apart from each other while they're inside the egg. And that is how you crack an egg very easily if you're 3. Okay, so I'm just going to put that shell to one side. I'm just going to give this a little whisk. If your egg was off, you would know by now because you can smell it really easily. So there we go. I'm just going to pop that in with my cream and sugar, and I'm going to crack the other egg. So same as before, tap and listen. There we go, find the hole, thumbs up, together, into the hole, and come apart. There's your egg cracked. Okay, another quick whisk. And that can go in with everything else. Okay, I'm going to use this bowl again. There's no reason why not. I'm going to get my scales. I'm going to weigh out or measure out my milk as well. Let's take off my hands. So again, I want 90 mils of milk, so I can get 90 grams very, very easily this way. Again, if you just weigh it into your little bowl, if you end up doing too much, you haven't ruined your whole mixture. You can just tip a bit out and start again. Okay. So I'm going to pop that in. Okay, now that is my basic custard. I'm just going to give that a little whisk together. Just start that sugar dissolving. It tends to sit in a big clump at the bottom. There we go. That's just started that sugar dissolving. I'm going to flavour this now with some vanilla. I've got some vanilla extract here. You may not have measuring spoons, that's absolutely fine if you don't have a measuring spoon. Okay, what you can do is either use a medicine spoon like this, and this is a ½ teaspoon measure, the smaller one here, or I'm sure you've got loads of these if you've got children knocking about, a cow pulse syringe. Obviously this is clean, but you've got your full teaspoon measure and a ½ teaspoon measure there, and children find this really fun to use. That's what I'm going to do today. Okay, so I'm just going to put the syringe right down into the vanilla and suck up ½ teaspoon, and it's really, really easy to get a good accurate measure. And then obviously children can have lots of fun pushing the plunger, not too fast. You don't want it to all squirt up like that just did at me. There we go. Okay, just put the lid on the vanilla before I knock it over by accident. And we're just going to add in one more flavour as well, because this is an orange flavoured custard. So here's my orange and my zest. It's quite a big orange this, you don't need to have one as big as this one. I'm just going to grate the zest in. You're probably aware, but when you use citrus fruits and you zest them, if you buy organic, if you're able to get hold of that, then that's obviously fine, just give it a quick wash. If you're using a normal orange, lime, lemon, to help them last longer on the shelves, they're coated with a bit of wax, which is that slightly shiny appearance you get. It's quite hard to get off, but just give them a good scrub under some hot water and that will get rid of at least most of the wax for you. So, nearly there. You can probably see it all falling off into the bowl. But there's plenty there on the underside of my grater as well, so I'm just going to give that a really good tap. Any grater or zesty you've got will work just fine for that. As much of that in as I can. And I'm just going to give that one last whisk. Okay, so that is the orange flavoured custard ready to use. There we go. Okay, so I'm just going to put that to one side for a minute because we're going to move on to the actual pudding itself. Okay, so what I've got here is a baking dish. Any baking dish you've got, it doesn't need to be completely accurate in size. Normally when I'm making this with children in my class, obviously they need to take them home again at the end, so we use a disposable tin. And the ones that you get at takeaways, the little shiny metal tins, the longer ones, this will fit in one of those just fine. It'll fit in the one I just showed you. You just need to imagine the breads that you've got basically and make sure that it's not going to get lost in the dish, but it is all obviously going to get fit in there. So what I'm going to do first of all is I've got my melted butter here and I've got a pastry brush. If you don't have a pastry brush, then don't melt your butter, okay? Just use some very, very soft butter and a cutlery knife instead. But what I'm going to do is just paint the inside of this dish just to get it ready with a little bit of our butter. The recipe I've given you says 25 grams of butter. I've actually got 35 here just to give me a bit spare for preparing this dish, and that will just mean that your pudding doesn't stick to it too badly. Okay, so I'm doing the sides as well as the base. You don't need a great big puddle in there, but just enough, just to stop everything sticking. There we go. So if you haven't got melted butter, just use a bit of kitchen roll and just wipe a bit of softened butter around instead. But that's the dish prepared. What I'm going to do now is use the rest of that butter to paint onto our bread. And the reason we paint it is that spreading bread and butter is actually a very difficult skill for young children. It's surprisingly hard for them to do, to hold it still, to spread, to not break the bread, make holes in it. The butter's sometimes too hard. So if you're cooking with younger children, it's much, much easier to melt your butter and paint it on. Okay, I'm going to take the crusts off this bread. So I'm just going to use a pizza cutter. And I'm just going to run along 2 slices at a time. We've got 4 slices of bread here. I like wholemeal for this dish. I think it gives it a nice flavour and it makes you feel slightly better about it being healthier. But obviously any bread you've got is fine. These offcuts, don't throw them away. Blitz them up, freeze them, and they will be breadcrumbs whenever you want to make fish goujons, chicken nuggets, breaded halloumi sticks, anything like that. You could use them for a treacle tart, anything that you need breadcrumbs for. Okay, so don't throw away your crusts, just blitz them up and freeze them. I have a bag in the freezer that I just add to from time to time. There we go. Okay, so there's my bread. I'm just going to lay it out on a board all together here. Push it together so there aren't any gaps and you'll make much less of a mess. And we're just going to get our pastry brush and our melted butter and we're going to paint it all over. Try not to get too much in any one place. You don't want one soggy bit and another dry bit. You want it all spread out. Just hold the bread steady. And you want to use all of this butter, so if you've gone around all 4 bits and there's a bit left, just have a look for any dry bits and go over them. There we go, nearly done. You can see that's much, much easier for little fingers to do than trying to spread with a knife. Obviously, if you don't have a pastry brush, then you might just need to give little hands a bit more help. But either way, get that butter all over your bread. There we go. Now then, depending on what size of dish you've got, move those to one side. Just have a think about how you might want to cut this up. So if I just show you, if I put my bread in that way, it's going to get a bit lost in the dish. It's a bit too big. So I'm going to cut this diagonally and then you can imagine that will fit in beautifully. Okay. Obviously, if your dish is more narrow or your bread's bigger, then you might want to think about cutting it widthways or lengthways instead. Okay, so I'm just going to use my pizza wheel and I'm going to run just through each piece of bread like that. There we go, right across 2. And this is definitely fun for children to help you with. Obviously, just make sure fingers stay out of the way of any shiny bits. We just hold the handle. There we go, but that's our bread cut up. And I'm just going to put this in the dish now. And ideally what you want is to have some bits sticking up a little bit because they're the bits that'll go crunchy a bit later on when it's cooked. There we go. So we're just going to stand them all up. Have a bit of fiddle about with them until you've filled the dish nicely. You can stand them up a bit more or lie them down a bit more as you need to. And there we go, that's our bread and butter in our dish. I've got this on a baking tray just in case the custard bubbles over. It shouldn't, but it might. And I'd rather not have to clean my oven. Okay, so that's almost ready, except that I talked about chocolate orange. So what I've got here is 25 grams of chocolate chips. I haven't got dark chocolate. Dark chocolate would be better, but these are milk chocolate. These will be absolutely fine. And what I'm going to do is sprinkle these in. You definitely want some at the bottom of the dish because that will help flavour the custard. So pop some down the sides, maybe lift your bread up, get a bit underneath. And then some in between each slice of bread as well. So just peel it back, pop them in. You don't want too many right on the top because they'll get the intense heat of the oven, and really what you want them to do is melt into the custard and soak into the bread. There we go. Let's put a few on top though, just to make it look pretty. There we go. Obviously, if you want to put a bit more chocolate in, you can. That's fine. There we go. So back to our custard here. Just give it another little mix because you can see the bits of the orange have all come to the top. Stir that back in again. And very, very carefully, we're going to pour this. Obviously, this bowl's great because it's got a handle and a lip, but if not, you might want to use a spoon or something just to help you, or a ladle. Or just be very careful when you're tipping. But what I'm going to try and do is get each bit of bread at least a little bit. Obviously be careful when you get near the edges so you don't slosh it like I just did. We're just going to pour this on. And what's really fun of cooking this with children is you can see that that's swimming around in the bottom of the dish there. If we wait even just a minute or two, you will see that the bread begins to soak that up, and it will really kind of soak it all up, and you'll begin to see there'll be much less liquid sloshing around in the dish because it will gradually just soak into all that bread. You can put this in the oven right now and you will get crispy, nice soaked bread in the middle and a kind of set custard around the edges. If you want to, you can pop some cling film over this, pop it in the fridge for an hour or two before you bake it, and that will give the bread much longer to soak up all of that custard, and you'll get a much kind of puffier bread bit without the kind of pool of custard around the outside. So it's exactly how you want it to be. I'm going to pop this in the fridge for a few hours. John and I are going to eat it later on. So I will show you what it looks like when I take it out of the oven later this evening. Bye. Okay, so the oven was preheated to 180. It's been in for between 25 and 30 minutes. It'll take a little bit longer if it's deeper. If it's shallower, then it won't take quite as long. So let's have a look. There we go. So, as you can see, that's all puffed up and delicious. I suggest you leave it just for a few minutes to cool down, and it will also be slightly less puffy when it's settled down a little bit. So if you want to take any photos, do it quite quickly after it comes out of the oven when it looks its most impressive. But we're going to enjoy this now, and I hope you enjoy yours too. See you next week.